Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Day after IFTA, and it was still a crazy day today. It didn't seem like I can get off the phones, and a lot going on here at VLocity Group. So glad we were able to make it here. As I mentioned before, we're moving tomorrow. I've decided not to bother and go with the stress of actually doing a show on Friday. Internet comes in between 3 and 4 o'clock at the new location. So I just don't want to chance it and worry about all that stress. So we'll see you on Monday here. Want to go over a couple housekeeping things here and some things to talk about. First off, the group has been staying extremely positive, and that is really one of my main goals. Not only positive, but a lot of activity from a broad group of people, which is also a good thing because it brings us a lot of different points of views, and different things. And now, I know when I started out, we were saying, hey, no discussing talking about brokerages. We want to stay away from that and avoid brokerages. Well, we're really talking about being profitable in your business. So there's going to be some discussions around that. What we're really trying to avoid is the broker bashing and the negativity and the tinfoil hat type of conversations that go on out there and seem to absorb and take over groups. So a couple things that we will from a business standpoint, like today there was a post about a broker that looks like they're going out of business. So as long as we're talking about something like that, I'll go ahead. If you're posting it, do me a favor, turn the comments off. If you don't, I'll turn the comments off. We just don't want that to spiral out of account and take away from what the group is. To that extent, we've also had a few where people have decided to get in and talking about that lying, cheating, stealing. None of that. Not going to have it. Going to put a stop to it. And fortunately, only had to ban and kick out one person, and wasn't surprised by who it was. I was kind of expecting it. So that's kind of some of the things on the housekeeping there. Again, thank you very much. Good, honest positivity going on out there. So keep it up. Let's take a look here. All right. So let's talk about some of the things that we have here. A couple topics that came up that I want to go over here today. Gary talking about what's keeping small carriers from getting their own shippers. And should you or shouldn't you haul for brokers? And talking about, as far as the broker bond, as far as having some security versus the bond not having some security on that. And it's a good point. And there's something, back when they were raising the broker bond to $75,000, I have yet to find anybody who's gotten more than pennies on the dollar when a broker goes under. And I know some people talk about the bond helps increase the barrier to entry. Well, let me tell you this. If somebody is looking to go and rip somebody off, a $3,000 as far as bond payment, when they can go out and get hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of from broker, is not going to deter them. I could care less about a broker bond, and I said back when they were doing it is everything should be done on credit. A broker bond really, only thing broker bond's really good for is if we do have a customer that is not going out of business, that you don't end up with you can use it as a way to make sure that, because they're fearful that their cost of their bond is going to go up if they start getting that reputation, having a lot of people filing on the bond and they're paying late. So that's the one thing that I think we've used the broker bond for. So so that was as far as the question talking about the broker bond. Now the other thing where people that, and this is kind of one of the sections where I was saying, hey, we want to watch what we're talking about as far as with how we talk about brokers. But people talking about brokers, there's something that I think that there's out there. We're going to talk about this a little later, and I've got some subject matter experts I may bring in to talk about this. And that's that some companies outsource. They take all their freight, even their warehousing, to what I call a true 3PL. Even though third-party logistics provider, a broker, fits into that category, in the bigger scheme of things, and if you go and you talk to somebody, a logistics manager, when they say 3PL, they're thinking of the guy that's going to come in and help them build out rates and build out lanes. That is going to come in and manage things, possibly buy their warehouse from them and lease it back, bring people in. I remember I was hauling insulation for Dow, and people had the Dow on the Dow Chemical on their shirt, but they got a paycheck from somebody else. Dow owned the warehouse where the insulation was coming out, and everybody there got a paycheck from somebody else. So I was hauling for, it was basically, technically, legally, they had to broker that freight out because it wasn't theirs, but that's one of those cases saying you're working with a broker. So there were scenarios out there, and I think a big challenge out there is there's a misconception and people don't understand all the different ways that you can get to freight. What is good is when you start to understand these different ways, and you understand and you don't put the blinders onto a term as broker freight. No broker freight. You put it onto quality freight, whether it's a dedicated lane or you're bidding on stuff, because what happens there is now you're opening yourself up to things. A great example, there's a company called Expeditors. They're very large. They're all over the place, and they manage a lot of auto. They manage a lot of stuff that's coming from overseas. They have freight that you would never talk to the company. They find the freight. They take the bids. They put companies on it. They act as if they are the logistics department for these companies. And there's lots of other companies out there that do that. And what's interesting is there's companies that many of you have never heard of, and I know for a fact that none of these companies ever post a single load on a load board. You actually have to qualify to get in to haul freight for these companies. And typically the rates are pretty good unless you're trying to go after a milk run. So not getting too blocked in terms of what the terms are, and to take a look at what the different types of ways that you can get freight from. Another great example is there's a company called NLM. They're now owned by XPO. They started out on their own up in Detroit area. They were bought by Landstar and sold to XPO. And they handle expedite freight for GM, Chrysler, Ford. I think at one point, I know at one point they were handling it for Nissan in Tennessee because we had an exclusive intrastate on that freight. Panther has since come in and gotten that freight. So that freight there, it's on the expedite side. You are gonna, it's who's gonna haul that freight is who NLM chooses. You have to go through a process. You're still signing GM contracts and Chrysler contracts and having to put up millions of dollars of insurance in order to be able to haul that freight. But there's lots of groups out there that you probably haven't heard of, and keeping your ear to the ground and looking at magazines and reading financials of companies to see as far as the different things and starting to dig into it, you may find some gems out there as far as what you're doing. So again, not trying to stay out of that being too too putting everything too much in a box that you can lose out on some of the things that you really don't want. You really want to be able to go after. So I put up a talking about advertising and doing local promotions as far as in the community. And one of the things that this is kind of interesting because you see a lot of people are saying that that they want to go after local freight. And I saw some great posts in here, people talking about how they're involved with their community and they're getting known. I'm going to tell you a story when I was back in the cellular. And I'm going to keep this quick. Back in the cellular days, I was selling into the Salinas Valley, actually King City, and I was a member of the Young Farmers. It's basically a group of men come together. They do fundraiser barbecues, and all the money goes to benefit children. So every year they have the county fair. My company that I worked for at the time, which was Cellular One, I went into the county fair. I bought a pig. One of the kids, FFA or 4-H, whichever it was, bought a pig. Okay, hey, you know what? Cellular One bought this pig. Okay, I got noticed with that. I had done, previous to that, I had done another fundraiser where we sponsored everything on that fundraiser. Well, I'll tell you this. I was trying to get all the cellular business moved over from all these farmers because they were the big dollar guys, right? They lived in their truck, and this is when cellular was, 45 cents a minute to use the phone. So we wanted that business, and but they're working with a lady out of the Bay Area who came down every quarter, if that often, and came through and saw all the guys, and they all wanted to see Darlene, and it was a whole big thing, male scum type of thing out there. But after I did all that, did the fundraiser, and she hadn't been down there, I sat in the bar drinking Crown Royal. I bet half the contracts I signed, I don't even remember signing. And I spent the next 2 weeks going from location to location to location, signing up. To this date, I still hold for the small market. Well, actually, there's no Cellular One. By the time that all came down, I had the single largest month of business that anybody had ever done for the market of that size. So that was all about figuring out and doing some kind of marketing and being involved as far as in the local community. So that's a great one. Now the other thing that I didn't see anybody do here, and I think this one is that people really don't understand about this. And where are we at here? There we want to go. Traffic clubs. So here I pulled up Traffic Club of Chicago. And what traffic clubs are is these are basically local groups for transportation and logistics people. I was going to pull up the one for Georgia, or for the outside here that I went to. I went to one of their monthly meetings where it's a lunch and learn. So they have somebody who comes up and talks about stuff. And it was a guy for DuPont, logistics guy, the decision maker for DuPont. Here I am sitting in a room with 40 people, and there's the logistics guy for DuPont. I wasn't in a position to do anything to go out and get that business, but those were the type of people. And as you go around, yeah, there's the salespeople, and you got all those types of salespeople in there. But I'll tell you right now, as far as in that group, there were no small carriers in there. They were either large carriers or they were other people as far as in the mostly had freight that they wanted to ship. So it's a great way, and they have social activities and things like that that you can get involved with. A lot of them have fundraiser golf tournaments and things like that. So that's one of those things. Take a look, just search traffic club in your city or traffic club in your state, and see what you can do to possibly get involved with that group, because you're going to meet a lot of people in your area that are the decision makers of the freight that you want to haul. So that's one of those big ones that people need to pay attention to and take a look out there. Being a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I think that's one of those that I've been a member of a lot of chambers. The biggest challenge, and it's the group. So one of the things, don't think that being a member of a chamber is the magic bullet to getting freight. I have found in certain areas, most of the people that go to the chamber are salespeople. So basically, you got a bunch of salespeople trying to sell the salespeople, and nobody has the ability to make a decision unless it's a small company there. But if you're involved in your small community, A lot of times the chambers do a lot for the community. So you really got to feel out what type of chamber you have to see if it's going to be worthwhile for you. And you can't necessarily do that by who's a member, because I can tell you right now that there are a couple big shippers here in Chattanooga that have probably been a chamber since they got started, and they probably haven't been more than one or two meetings. So they will pay their dues for the chamber. They'll put the plaque on the wall, but they're really not involved. So you want to see who's involved rather than who's a member. That's a big piece of it. Sports teams, again, if you have a small community where people are seeing you, sports teams and youth activity, doing sponsorships there for your business. I know a lot of people who do it as far as it has absolutely nothing to do with growing their business. It's just supporting the community, which is a great thing. So those are some of the things that people do. I'd love to hear some more of your comments about that. One of the other things, I may have said this at the beginning, transitioning here a little bit. What I would like to do, and I already started to line up, is we'll have the ability to bring on people from remote areas where we can have two people in here presenting, and I want to bring subject matter experts into this. What I mean by that is maybe it's somebody who works with fuel cards, so they can talk about how the fuel is pricing, or whatever they want to talk about. Not sales presentations. I mean, I don't mind bringing a factoring person in here to talk about factoring and how to get out of factoring and some of the things you need to be careful of, as long as they're not out there trying to hammer down on their factoring. But I want to bring those subject matter experts in. We got a couple people in here that I know from my experience being out there have a vast amount of information. Great example, talking about NLM and expediters. There's a couple people in this group that I know have dealt with those businesses and know all the different types of businesses and can give you a much better education on that side of the business, and Penske and Ryder and getting business with those types of people. So I want to bring those people in as far as subject matter experts. Now, I also, you know what, I don't know if I brought this up before, but right now, this is just coming into Facebook. Sometime next week, as we test this out, we work with it, we are going to also be going at the same time live to the VLocity Group channel. So what I do now is it goes to VLocity Group, and then I forward it, or I share it to the page. But I'm going to go live to VLocity Group, live into the group, and then also live into Facebook. But if you haven't been to Facebook, our Facebook, go and sign up for the Trucking MBA. Click that button, because maybe if you're not in Facebook, you'll get an alert when these come up, and we have other things that are popping up. And plus, it'll tell you a little bit about what we do as far as in this business. So thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate all the contribution that you guys all have been putting out there. It's really kind of amazing out there. All right, thanks a lot.